The Lyon County Precinct to order, and since I'm a little out of the loop on the planning here, Renee did a lot of the planning and the agenda, so take it away, Renee.
Okay, Aaron, would you open us with prayer, please?
Our Heavenly Father, thank you for being a loving and caring God, and thank you for keeping a hand of protection over this great country of ours. I pray that you'll be working on the hearts of our leaders and our leadership in Washington to basically go back to your will and keep you in our country and in our thoughts and prayers. I pray that you'll bless this meeting as we discuss our local business. I pray that you'll be with each of us as we go home tonight. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, welcome to everyone. I'm glad you're here. We're especially glad that our guests are here tonight. And sorry that one of the candidates could not be here, but he did have a prior commitment and said he was very sorry that he would miss. He would really like to meet and greet and be here too. So, what? Who was that?
Doug Peck?
Yeah, Doug Peck. So, we're just gonna hit it right now. And I've asked the candidates to share for about 7 minutes and tell us who they are and what they stand for and their ideas. And I know that's not very much time, but you know we do better with Q&A when all of the presentations are done. So be sure you're formulating those questions. I've asked our guests if they want to address each of the questions that they can, if they want to pass on it or they've already addressed it in their introduction. So I think we're good to go. And I'm going to let them introduce themselves, and we're going in alphabetical order by first name. By first name. Okay? All right, fellas?
Okay, so it looks like I'm up. I'm Phil Mott, live in Admire. I came to the county about 28 years ago with my job. I came to work with Shears. I was with Shears, and for that whole time, I retired last year. During that period of time, we raised all three of our children in North Lyon County. They all graduated from North Lyon County High School. I've been on the planning board here for 15 years, and before that I helped, going back in time, the first rewrite I believe was in 2003. I was there when they rewrote part of it and attended all the meetings and the big meetings at that time. I also served on the Kansas Aggregate Producers Association's board for several years. Currently, past, I gave it up this February, but I was vice president of the Kansas Muzzleloading Association. And I do a lot of work with Boy Scouts and shooting sports and different things like that. So that's a little bit about me. The reason I'm running is over those 15 years being involved in zoning, there's been things that happened that I didn't like. I'm not on the zoning board necessarily because I think that we need to be over-regulated. I believe that there's a right amount of regulation, but what we've got to protect is we've got to protect property rights, and we've got to encourage industrial and residential growth in the county if the county's to succeed. We've got in the county, in comparison to the surrounding counties other than Coffee County, we've got tremendous road systems. And right now, this time of year, every year, it's very challenging to keep up. And most people complain about the roads, and I understand that. but in comparison, we're in pretty good shape. It takes a lot of money to maintain those roads. And the way we're gonna do it, we're not gonna do it with raising the mill levy. Our mill levy's already high enough. But as we bring that base up, be it industrial or residential in the county, with more tax dollars to work with and the mill levy, or more tax base to work with, and that mill levy can come down. Looking at Coffee County, 85% of their tax base in Coffee County is wood. When you look at that, they got a 0.92 mill levy, and I think ours is 1.48. So that's kind of where I'm at on that growth issue. And the other thing that concerns me, and I have been told that this is suicide to say this, but I want everyone to think about this. If Lyon County is going to continue to prosper, we need, in my opinion, to take the county commission to 5 commissioners. And the reason for that is because of the supermajority rule when it comes to land use issues in Kansas. And what ends up is you end up with a minority controlling land use issues when there's a supermajority requirement with 3 commissioners. Because then it takes, you gotta be unanimous to pass any land use if there's a protest issue. And I really believe that if we're going to go forward, we need to increase the representation. And that's really about where I'm at.
You're a good time.
Well, I'll try to match that. So, my name is Robert McClelland. I was a graduate of Northern Heights High School. I'm gonna try to speak fast because there's a bunch of stuff I'd like to cover before the Q&A, so it kind of maybe spurs some questions. I was able to participate in the vocational high school program here in Lyon County. If it wasn't for that vocational high school program where I was able to graduate high school and vocational college at the same time, I wouldn't have been able to take advantage of the opportunities it afforded me later on after my education. I grew up in a broken home here in Lyon County, so much of the demographic that we have here in Lyon County is a lower economic, lower socioeconomic environment. A lot of broken homes, a lot of foster kids, a lot of single income families, maybe a mom or a dad raising 2 or 3 kids. So I am uniquely aware of the challenges that those families face because of my upbringing. My grandmother raised me. After high school and college, I moved away, was able to start a company, grow that company with the help of my wife, and then sell and merge that company in 2016. That has allowed us to then move back home currently. I'm the operations manager of a feedlot and ranch currently in North Lyon County. The reason I'm telling you those things is because I am the ideal family, me and my wife, that we want to come back to Lyon County. I also moved away because I felt like I didn't have an opportunity here. The reason I'm running for county commissioner is because a lot of those things I just mentioned, I look forward to trying to change. I think that we have an image problem in Lyon County, Emporia as well. Emporia is the largest population center in the county. So when I say Emporia, I mean Lyon County or vice versa. But there is an image problem, there's a stigma problem. Young people don't want to move back here because of that image problem, whether it was a smelly beef in the IBP in the past, lack of opportunity, not fun things to do. When you look at the drug usage problem in Lyon County, it's also alarming. I met with the CEO of New England Regional Health and talked to him, and I asked him, I said, how many overdoses are we seeing a month? He said 50, or 4%. I said 4% of how many admittances? He said 1,200. So that's 50 per month. If you multiply that out by 12 months, that's 600 people. If you do the math and you look at maybe that's 10% of the population, that means 17.6% of our population in Lyon County today is abusing some type of a substance. When you look at the reason why people abuse substances, I've met with the NA, I got a meeting with SOS, I met with a lot of different organizations here in the county. I've met with the sheriff's department, the police department in Emporia, I'm participating in the fire deal right now. The 911 call center, Roxanne Van Gundy, I also talked to her. When you look at the reasons why people are abusing substances, most people that have recovered have told me, if I had the opportunity to get myself to and from after school activities, mentorship programs and such, I wouldn't have been involved. So when you look at prevention versus rehabilitation, it's cheaper to prevent versus rehabilitate. I think there's things that we can do in this county, for instance, transportation. LCAT is a 2% line item on the county budget, it's 600 grand. We get about 270,000 back from KDOT off of that. The $270,000 after meeting with LCAT, because I met with all of them, the management team, the $270,000 goes back into a general fund that they can't access to develop the program. The advertising on the side of the vehicles also go back into a general fund that they also can't use to develop the program. I don't think it's that far off to look at trying to use those funds and reinvest in that program and expanding it for some of our kids in the community to designated safe zones or productivity zones or mentorship programs and allow those kids to ride for free. When I asked them what that would cost to do that, currently it costs about $50,000 currently. But like I said, there's $270,000 that they're not getting used. Emporia city limits is getting 90% of the 44,000 rides that are produced annually off of this transportation program. They kick in $0 into it, zero. So that's one of the reasons why I'm running. When Phil mentioned the growth of the economy, everybody wants to reduce taxes, but no one wants to reduce services. So you're always at this constant battle of how do you maintain service and reduce tax at the same time. The only way that you're gonna do that is by growth of the population. Emporia right now is roughly losing about 400 people per year according to a study that was done. That's a small amount, but that's still an amount that they're dropping in population. I think that we can work with some other organizations as far as marketing our county in a good manner. I think Phil noted some stuff with the Lyon County Comprehensive Plan that's I think on its 3rd revision now. I'm not for that plan the way it's currently written. I think we need to get through this election. I think we need to allow the new commission to vote. I am not for a 5-commissioner panel. When you look at the 5-commissioner thing, I think 3 commissioners representing 11,300 people is a good representation of the county. If you increase it by 2 people, that's 2 more salaries, 2 more CAPERS plans, 2 more health insurance plans. Now, I'm not saying that there's not benefits of one versus the other, and that can be argued. However, in the grand scheme of things, I feel like if we don't have good representation with 3 county commissioners in a Lyon County of about 34,000 people, then we all need to do a better job of getting more people involved in politics, getting them out to run for politics, and then getting them to vote. Because that's the only way that we're really going to change things. As far as how do we grow the county, there's a lot of different programs that are interesting to me. Ignite Emporia is one of them. There's some other things that are going on right now with the housing study. I can't tell you that I'm going to be the best. I don't think anybody up here is ever going to tell you they're the most qualified or that they're the best. What I can tell you is that I'm honest, I'm a hard worker. Any line item that's in our budget right now, we're a $29 million a year budget. Any line item that's in that budget, I've either reached out to or made appointments with every department head and every manager in that budget. Appointments I have this week, I have one with SOS. I have one with Flint Hills Health to talk about the coronavirus, because obviously that's a big one that's coming up. And look at things that they're dealing with right now, just to hit on the coronavirus, because I know that's something that everybody's worried about. Right now, we have no test kits in Lyon County. The only place that can test for the coronavirus is in Topeka. If they evaluate a patient in Lyon County and they're found to meet the criteria, Newman Regional Health has someone on staff to ferry or curry the test up to Topeka to the Kansas lab. Right now, in order to get approval for that, it has to go through KDHE. And KDHE last week also increased the staff in that call center that's being monitored 24 hours a day by 3 people, I believe. There's gonna be some decisions that are gonna be made with that. Raleigh can probably hit on this. If we have an outbreak here, it's gonna be up to the county commissioners to decide how to handle that. If it's a major outbreak. So I know there's gonna be a lot of questions that come up. 7 minutes doesn't give you a lot of time to cover everything that I wanna cover, but hopefully you guys have some good questions and we can kinda go from there.
Raleigh, what do you have for us?
Well, what I have for you is probably what I've been doing a little bit. First of all, I'm running for commissioner in the 3rd district, which is the southern part of the county and the southern part of the city. Anything basically south of Highway 50, so Hartford, Opie are in my areas. I am a farmer and a rancher. I'm participating in our family farm. I live in southeast Lyon County, in a little bit of nowhere. I'm 2 miles from the Greenwood County line and 5 miles from Coffee County. I always make a joke that my address is Hartford, where I live 14 miles from there. Our kids are in the Opie School District, which are 10, and then my hard line is from Madison, Kansas. So the salesmen sometimes have a hard time catching up with me because they don't know where I'm at. But anyway, raised my family there. We have 4 children, adult children, all of them graduated from Opie High, and all of them have graduated from college and got careers settled all across the United States. One in Houston, one in San Diego, the other one in Omaha, and my middle daughter and her husband live right about a quarter of a mile down the road and currently doing the cropland farming. I do the pasture management and the beef cow herd as part of my contribution now to I've been in elected public service. This is I finished 25 years. I served 14 years on the Opie USD 252 school board, and I'm currently have finished 11 years as Lyon County Commissioner. So it's been 25 years of elected community service, and I kind of understand. Don't always get everything done right, but I understand. Some of the positive things I would like to emphasize here in our county right now: we have no debt, we pay no interest in our budget. It has been the history of the county commissioner to pay as you go. And also there's good things like right now they're going, we got 3.5% unemployment, which means a high demand for jobs, and a lot of jobs that may have gone open. One of the 3 areas that we're having trouble filling job is the jail, and there's about 10 or 12 positions open there. There's a couple under sheriff's jobs, and then our dispatch, which is currently about 5 or 6 positions down. The one common thread through all them is that they are 24/7 hours, and when you hire on, you gotta work the evenings, you gotta work the nights, you gotta work the weekends, and it's increasingly harder to find those kind of dedicated people to do that. So we're working at it. In my opinion, we've got one of the best senior management staffs in the county. Since I've been on, we have upgraded our department heads once the turnover happened. We've got good senior management, we've got good elected officials that are conscious of of being efficient and trying to do the job. It's always hard to manage how many services or we should target. Our mission statement is that we should promote economic growth, we should do fiscal responsibility, and we should be transparent in our workings. One area I think that has been mentioned, but economic development. I think the county could get more involved with the economic development. Currently, as a budget item, we do not have any money dedicated per se to economic development. We've always let the RDA, the Regional Development Association in Emporia, do that. The RDA and the Emporia Enterprises and all those economic development groups are funded through the Cessna tax, which is the half-cent tax, only paid in the city of Emporia. However, all the county residents that go to Emporia and buy and so on contribute 30% of their money that they take in as a city to promote economic development. So in some way or shape or form, I think that is one area I think we've got to help and work with. Like it's been mentioned before, it would expand our population, which is needed. And there's different things that I firmly believe in: common sense, a practical approach, and a balanced and fair way of doing things. And that's been my career, my political career, or community service career, whatever you want. And I think I have a good rapport with the people and a good rapport with our employees. The county employs 270 employees, so it's hard to know what every little one does, but sure enough, if one makes a mistake, you know, the commission is responsible for it. So anyway, we'll enjoy some of your questions, and there's a lot of other aspects we can go into, but I think that's a little brief summary of where I'm at right now.
Well, if you guys were to be elected on timing, you'd be really good at it. That's fun. So, all right, so are you ready for some questions? All right, the floor is open.
Raleigh, what is the mill levy now on the real estate?
Well, the total mill levy is just under 60 mills for the county's portion. There was another number here, but that also included the city and the school districts and so on. But the county portion is just under 60 mills. And in the last 2 years, we have lowered the mill levy a little bit. Not a lot. I think last year was 3/4 of a mill, and then prior to that was maybe a half a mill. So, and as far as the mill levy, we've been able to keep it flat or try to lower it a little bit to run our operation here in the county.
There's a Senate Bill 294. Is everybody familiar with that bill, the honesty gap bill? I think that as you look at a national level and the distrust in government right now, I think bills like that are appropriate. You know, as you distrust our government from a national level, it trickles down to a state level and then eventually down to a county level. The concerns that I have with that bill currently, and I've talked to a couple different senators and actually the legislative liaison for Derek Schmidt, and there's a cost component to our county in order to notify, and they're trying to figure out what that component's gonna look like and how we can notify. I think that when you look at the mill levies, there's a lot of fudging that can go on with your property tax that is from an assessment perspective. So you have $29 million budget, and if you want to increase that the way it has been in the past, you have 2% annually from the state that allows you to automatically increase your property tax by 2%. The cap on that bill has been removed, however, it requires notification moving forward, and I think that's a great thing.
There is not a 2% cap on raising the evaluation.
No, there's a 2% built-in automatic that if, as a county, you want to raise the tax, you can do 2% per year annually without having to notify or do anything or vote. And that's been in there for as long as he can tell me that it's ever been in there. With the way it was written before, is there was a cap, according to what he was telling me. The new legislation removes the cap, however, it requires everything to be notified and go through a vote. When you look at transparency, I think we do have a transparency issue in Lyon County. I think that we have some very good, valuable resources at our disposal. One is Flint Hills Technical College. They have a media department. It is beknownst to me why we don't film our county commission meetings and post them on the internet, YouTube or Facebook or the website, to allow everybody in this room to participate in those meetings. There are counties that have less than 2,000 population in Kansas right now that post or live stream their county commissioner meetings on the internet. And I don't know why we don't do that. It wouldn't be that hard. We have students that do that. When you look at the jobs in Lyon County, we are a skilled blue collar county. We are a lunch bell county, so to speak. I've met with a lot of employers across the county. Every single one of them needs skilled labor. There is a 0% unemployment rate. If you're an able-bodied individual in Lyon County right now and you want to work, there is a job for you, period. There's not a 3% unemployment rate. There is a shortage of employment across the board in the entire county. Everybody's looking for people, but they're looking for skilled people. Last year, we gave $250,000 to ESU. I'm not saying that's bad money. It's the first time ever they gave $50,000 to Flint Hills Technical College. I'd like to see those numbers reversed. $250,000 going to Flint Hills Technical College, $50,000 going to ESU, and here's why. Flint Hills Technical College can prepare staff and give us a 9 to 12 month return on our investment on that $250,000. I met with Flint Hills Technical College, spent 4 hours there touring the entire campus, all of their department heads. Every single one of them has said anytime that we have increased our technology in our school, we have doubled the rate of enrollment. And there's a 50% waiting list just to enroll. Every employer that I have talked to in Lyon County today needs people from Flint Hills Technical College today. Not tomorrow, not next year, not 3 years, not 4 years from now, today. So I do think that there's a transparency issue that we have, and I know that veered off there a little bit. The other issue I have with transparency is our website. We have a .org website for the county. That is one of the most fraudulent websites that you can have. .govs are the way to go. If you get on the county commissioner's website, or Lyon County's website, go to the county commissioner tab, it still has the outdated date from when the commission meeting even takes place right now today. So if you want to attend the meeting, and you want to attend a county commissioner meeting, and you get on the website, it is telling you the wrong date to attend the meeting. How is that appropriate?
I've got a question I put to the group maybe. We have heard a few things about the Plan ELC, and I'd like to get all of your responses on what you're thinking. My own impression is it's a solution looking for a problem, and it seems like your zoning head seems to be its primary advocate. And of course, now he's now been named in charge of Ignite Emporia. Am I right or wrong? I'm new to the community. I moved here from Nevada less than 2 years ago, where we also have a Lyon County. That's part of the website problem. I think every state in this country has a Lyon County. So, but anyway, that's one of my concerns about it, is that the Plan ELC solution, looking for a problem, and why are we doing it?
Well, I'd like to respond to that a little bit. You're talking about the comprehensive plan part of it, or you're talking about the rules and zoning regulations part of it?
Yes.
Well, first of all, let's go back and understand why we did our comprehensive plan. 19 years ago was the last time Lyon County had done a comprehensive plan, just a plan to see what direction you want your industry to go and what your values are. And we've done that and we've updated it. There's a lot of reasons, because in applying for like private grants and things like that, one of the check boxes that they have on there is, have you updated your comprehensive plan? You know, are you current? Are you thinking about what you want your community to look at in the future? Now, as far as the zoning thing, there was a duplicate. We had duplicated a 3-mile area around Lyon County called the metropolitan zone, and that area also existed down to there was a narrow strip down to the airport. That area around, not in the city, but around the city, a 3-mile radius, and then an area extended down, was under the control of the city as far as regulations. And those people would come up to me, why do we have this? And it required another board, it required another set of rules and regs, and the citizens that were in that district we can't even vote on who we want to regulate that because we're not in the city. So part of the zoning thing is to do away with that duplicate area and have the city and the county, and not this purgatory, you might say, of an area around the city for rules and regulations. There's a lot of other things as far as updating the regulations. Your zoning is to protect what you got and not allow things you may not want to come in. And that's the basic line of the zoning and so on. It's complicated. It's 168, and we're supposed to be getting our third draft coming up. I'm real disappointed we haven't gotten it yet. In fact, I'm going to instruct our lawyers to look through the contract and see if there is a penalty for not providing opportunity to, in a timely manner, the third draft. Because I'll get some reasons here and I get some reasons there, but I think it just needs a little fire under it. But that's my opinion on that, sir.
I'd like to, the comprehensive plan when it came about, and I've been on the planning board, that was relegated out to the consultants. And I attended every one of those meetings, practically every one of them. And when I looked at the data that I see, and I even look at the bar charts in the front of the comprehensive plan that shows the responses, and then read the narrative, it's two different stories. It's not the same story. Unfortunately, I think that the comprehensive plan, I think there was some political bias. Bias came into that from the group that wrote it, and I think they had an agenda. In fact, I know they did. When you go and read some of their positions on different things, they're very green. Talking to Mark when he was down here at Gilman, he was a very green person. He had a very bias to that.
Is this the Oregon company?
Yes, and we ended up with a comprehensive plan that did not reflect, in my opinion, the views of the county. Now, I can't answer for the city, and maybe the city was perfectly happy with what they got. But that part in the county, and in particular, the language, the very restrictive language as to what was to go on in the ag district, and the language that pertained to the minimum of 40 acres. I was disappointed in our current commission in that it took an exceptionally long time to get those to come over to understanding that the county didn't necessarily agree with having 40 acres, that we wanted to have the 5 acre minimum, just like we've always had. Control the density if something needs control, but you don't. That's detrimental to our small communities. It's very detrimental to our school districts. When you read a lot of the rules and regulations that came later in the first and second draft, a lot of that there was confusion in that they were citing regulations as to the metropolitan county of Johnson County as being the rules for the county. That's been fixed. I'm disappointed that the third draft as well is not out, because I believe that once we get the third draft, we're gonna find that most of that has been fixed. I think all of that, the errors, the problems that were in there, the fencing, the porches, the architectural requirements, the acreage requirements, the people coming in to inspect your house to make sure you weren't using 400 square feet instead of 392 square feet as a home business. All that has been removed. And it's put back, and it's actually, in my view, I haven't seen the draft, but if everything in the third draft comes out like it's supposed to, then the third draft will probably be better than what we currently have as zoning regulation. Because there was a lot of things that were illegal. There were a lot of things that were carried over from Emporium from when we wrote the last one. So I think most of that has been, and the credit goes to you guys. It goes to the involvement of the community, in my opinion. I think when we got the Kansas Livestock Association, the attorney with them involved, that was a tremendous help. It pointed out a lot of these things that were illegal, that we shouldn't have been doing, and that's been straightened out. So I really do believe that on the zoning matter, I think that we're gonna find that we do have that fixed. Now, as far as not being satisfied with it and wanting that to go away, the county's already spent $250,000 on it. The city's already spent $250,000 on it. If in fact we get a document that's better than the last document, and we fixed a lot of these things that were illegal, it is a living document. If you've got an active zoning board, one of the things that's very critical in there is that the administrative part has been changed to where the county will be able to act on what pertains to the county without the blessing of the city. So you're gonna find all these things are fixed, and with those fixed, it wouldn't make sense now after spending $500,000 to throw that out. We're gonna need to take that document and move forward with it.
Have you actually seen the survey that Urban Collaborative?
I have not physically read all the surveys, but what I have done is examine all the bar graphs for the questions and answers. If you look at your comprehensive plan and read the bar graphing, and then read the narrative, it's 2 stories.
Yes, I
Two
understand
different
that.
stories?
Well, it just doesn't match, the verbiage doesn't match the data.
But that's what I'm saying. Is there actually a statistical analysis? Is there a list of the method that they used? Do we have, when you do a polling survey, there is an industry-wide standard that must be applied to preparing to collect the data, collecting the data, and reporting on the data. Do we have that document? Have you seen it?
Yes, I've seen it. We went through it. I don't know, I can't address every particular thing like you're wanting, but, it's there. It's been reviewed by the planning board and our committees and so on.
On this board.
And
No, not
why,
yet.
why wouldn't it be made public?
Why? It was a survey of the people. And so it is common for that to be made public to the people who were surveyed. Not only that, but who was surveyed. I mean, this is an industry-wide standard. This is not unusual.
I don't know that answer, but I can get
And
you
were
it.
there 3 surveys? How many reports were given to you by Urban Collaborative?
I can't recall at this time.
Okay, well, we have asked multiple times in the workshops that we've had, and we've gotten the same answer.
Okay.
We've submitted public document, the
Request, right.
request, yes. No response to that either.
And who did you request that to?
Sam Seeley?
So I'd like to add a few things into this subject because it's a very corrosive topic for a lot of people. I met with the zoning and planning department for 4 hours, one-on-one. There is a document on the back of the Emporia Lyon County Comprehensive Plan. It has a whole list of names. Every article or every statement that I've ever read said a handful of residents picked Urban Collaborative, the Oregon-based company. I specifically asked him to point at the names on the piece of paper, an 8x11 sheet of piece of paper on who was there and got to vote to specifically pick Urban Collaborative. There's 4 names on that piece of paper that were pointed to. I think when you look at doing a zoning plan, so this is an Emporia Lyon County Comprehensive Plan, then you have a zoning regulations that goes with it, and no one has even started to talk about the codes and implementation side. So with the business that we were in, we dealt with a lot of permits. I know the challenges and the amount of cost that it drives up. I'm all about smaller government. I'm also all about protecting your neighbor's rights from your rights, but there has to be a happy medium. During that 4-hour conversation, we started to talk about the implementation, which no one wants to talk about. And in the implementation, based on how this plan is designed to make everything look the same, or to beautify, so to speak. Because every city does this and every county does it. If you remodel your property and you hit a certain valuation of that remodel cost, you have to bring the entire structure up to the new plan. Now, this doesn't necessarily pertain to Lyon County as much as it will in Emporia. However, during that conversation, I said, okay, well, let's go get in my car and we'll drive down Commercial Street here. And if we want to go to growing Lyon County and investing in business and having people come here and in entrepreneurship, let's just drive down Commercial Street and let's just put a value on these buildings. And then let's go, maybe Mr. and Mrs. Smith want to remodel that building because they're doing good with their business. And they finally got to a point where they can invest back in their company and do something, improve it. As soon as they hit that percentage of evaluation, now maybe that $30,000 remodel just went to 120 or 150 or 200,000. So there is a true cost component to this plan. I understand we spent $500,000 on it, but if we're on the third revision and the first one, if any of you read it, got released to the public in that condition, that means that the people that are in charge never read it, period. So if you didn't read it, why was it released to the public?
It seems to be the people in charge made a foolish mistake of wasting $500,000 of our taxpayer money.
Yes.
I'm not gonna disagree with you. If it was me, this is what I think should happen. It's much like the impeachment trial for Trump, right? We're going through an election right now. You know, a decision on adopting this or not adopting this should happen after the election, period. And no disrespect to Raleigh, you have one commissioner that's given up a seat, it's an open seat. And I don't know what Raleigh's intentions are, but I'd imagine he's getting towards the time of retirement. There's another commissioner that more than likely won't run again. When you look at Oregon, Urban Collaborative from Oregon to Kansas values, I don't know how you could pick two fundamentally different states to even try to align them together, period. Like, that is a PR nightmare. And then on top of that, to go with a company that was called Urban Collaborative in rural Kansas is also a PR nightmare. I don't know who in their right mind would ever choose to do that. $500,000 sounds like a lot of money, but you're talking about an economic impact into Lyon County for years.
Yes.
I understand this is a living document. To get something changed later is harder than not doing it right from the beginning.
There isn't gonna be an economic impact into this town until we get the taxes down to where people can afford them.
I'm not gonna disagree with you on that.
Not one bit.
You know, when you look at the water rates, the utility rates, there's a whole other discussion there. The plain and simple fact of the matter is, and I hate to pick on Raleigh because he's currently on there, so I apologize. Here's a prime example of infrastructure problems we have. A couple of weeks back, there was a cell tower wanting to be built in Americas. The cell tower was on a dirt minimum maintenance road. The comment was made at the commission meeting, because I attend every single one since I've filed. Haven't missed one yet. The comment was made at the commission meeting that the cell tower is going to benefit from that revenue or from that tower 99% of the time, 100% of the time. They don't need to have that road graveled. It was $4,000 to gravel half a mile, $10,000 to gravel a mile. When I got to the public comment section, I made the comment that basically there is a public safety component to the cell tower. I think everybody in this room can agree that more than likely you either know somebody or you have yourself done it, moved away from a landline to a mobile device. I know I have. We have a landline for our business, but my primary line is my mobile device. There are many, many, many people across the county that are also on a mobile device. The one time that tower goes down is going to be the 1% of the time, like when the Reading tornado hit. And when that tower is vitally important to public safety, the road isn't going to be dry. So why are we not graveling?
I'd like to comment on that.
When we got to the graveling part of it, the county commission decided not to gravel. The cell tower picked up the cost of graveling, but they very easily could have went the other way. Also, when you look at the broadband internet, when you talk about economic development, you can't move a business within a county that doesn't have a utility of the internet. We don't have corner-to-corner internet in the county. There are plenty of places in this county that can be developed, that can draw our taxes down. But if you don't have reliable internet, that in my opinion is a utility, no different than electricity or water or gas. It is a true utility. We made business decisions for ourselves based on the internet that we were able to get when we had our guy, period. You cannot conduct business in the 21st century without reliable internet. You just can't do it.
Well, and you can't have AT&T tell the state of Kansas that they've got broadband available everywhere when they don't.
Absolutely.
And that was handed out there right away. Oh, we can serve everybody.
I'd like to comment on the $4,000 or the graveling of the road. That cell phone tower, the $4,000 or $6,000, whatever it took them to get that there. I think it was a half a mile, it's not $4,000. It's pretty customary in any county or any jurisdiction that if you're gonna develop something off of the major track, that then you develop that road. If somebody came in and was gonna put a subdivision up north of town, and that got approved, they would have to put the roads in and bring them up to the county standards, and then the county would take over maintenance. That road was no different. That is the spot they designated they needed the cell phone tower. If that cell phone tower needed to be a half mile back there, the $4,000 to get it there is not a large portion. It's probably 1% of the cost of that tower, or probably less. And then the county would take over maintenance of that after that was established. But what happens is, you do that for one thing, then the next thing comes in, it needs to have that. And pretty soon, we're building roads for all this stuff. And that's not the business of the county. The county is here to facilitate, and I believe the county's job is to facilitate and make an environment where people can come in and do business. But we can't be taking tax dollars and invested in that. That's good for them. Now, we can maintain that after it's established, because then it's established. And much like if it was a subdivision, or we're not gonna go build roads and put sidewalks in a subdivision. You wouldn't expect to.
Having worked for a utility 36 years, the customer paid for us to get there, and then we maintained
And
it
you
after
maintained
that.
it.
All utilities.
It
I
cost
want a
me-
water board.
It cost me
Same thing.
$25,000 to put my water line to my house.
Yep,
I have absolutely no problem with doing that, because
I
I
agree.
fought the well for 10 years. And the 25,000 was cheap.
If we had more of that mindset, rather than you expecting the city to do this, the county to do this, take it upon yourself. Like you mentioned about $4,000, that's part of the cost of doing business.
Yeah.
I worked with a construction company for years, and that was part of the cost of doing business. We couldn't go to the city, we didn't go to the city and county and beg for roads and crap like this to get to our quarry site, our asphalt plant. That's part of the cost of doing business. And that mindset needs to change, where people take the responsibility for the cost, their cost, to accomplish these kinds of things.
I think I'm gonna have to philosophically disagree with some of that. So there is a different component that we're talking about here. We're talking about a public safety component versus a general economic.
No, you're not, because I'll tell you what, you will not get 100% power to any cell phone tower, and they have to have a UPS system, and then they gotta be able to bring in a generator if it's an extended long outage. I can tell you that, I've worked too many ice storms, tornadoes, and everything else.
Depending upon the severity of the tower, towers either, depend upon their category, have their own backup generator system. So depending upon what level that tower is in terms of a category, it will have its own power supply provided to it. So when you look at a public safety component, and I understand where you're coming from a generalized area, but there can be two separate precedences that we're talking about. That's, as soon as I made the public comment, the first thing that Sam Seeley did was run up to me and say, whoa, here's the deal. If we did it for them, then the wind tower that's out there, we would have to go through all them roads, and all them roads would be our responsibility to put them back the way they were. But we're talking about two separate things here. And until we start looking at the future of that, we are moving into the 21st century with technology, and that technology is ran off of that cell tower. I don't think until we change that mindset that we're truly gonna move into the future in Lyon County. Like, there is a true public safety component to a cell phone tower in the county. I understand what you're saying about as far as, roads to a rock quarry, or what you're saying as well. But neither one of those situations would create a life and death situation when a tornado hits and I get out my phone and it says no service and I'm trying to dial 911.
Really, I've been through that.
So that cell tower is one of those situations.
It is.
Yes.
But graveling the road to it isn't gonna, that the county should have to stand is not going to improve it any. That's up to the customer out there when he builds it.
I have one question for you, John.
Sure.
If I was cell phone tower company, and I came up North Lyon County and I said, okay, I need to build a tower, and it needs to be a half mile inside your pasture, you gonna build me a road?
Am I?
Yeah. Are you
Depends on
gonna
what
build
we're
me a
looking
road?
at. Absolutely, depends on what we're
You're
looking at. I'm
gonna,
not,
you're gonna
I
build
can't
me
sit
a
here and
road,
say,
rock it, and do all that, you're gonna spend
depending upon the
$40,000.
revenue that's gonna generate me as a landowner, absolutely, that would be something that we would discuss. Yeah,
I built to a lot of them, I never saw a landowner come up with it.
well, everything comes down to economic gain, right? Return on investment. So if we're gonna invest so much money, what are we gonna get out of it? So if someone came to me and said, I wanna build a cell tower on your land, Robert, would you build me a road to it? I would say, okay, well, let's look at what this is gonna get me in terms of revenue
The
over
cell
the
phone
next
tower.
5 or
It's gonna get you a
10.
cell phone tower. No revenue, it's gonna get you a cell phone tower, that's it. You're not
Well,
gonna
that's a
get any
different
revenue.
situation, because me as a landowner, I would get something for it. The county is a completely different animal, okay? So me as a landowner, I absolutely would get revenue from it, because they would have to rent or lease the parcel of ground that cell tower would be sitting on. From a county perspective, no, you're not gonna be getting revenue off of it. But the cell towers are vitally important to our infrastructure. That's why there's bills in place right now that you can't even stop them from being built. Why? Because it is that important to our future. Like, you can't even tell them where they can build and where you cannot build. And I understand there's a lot of controversy around that, but at the end of the day, we are going into the 21st century, and that's gonna be centered around internet. Internet is everything. Mobile devices are everything. And if we truly wanna look at how can we make Lyon County a powerhouse, it starts with them cell phone towers, period. Like, it just does.
In 10 years, we're gonna have a deal where we set it out there, we'll provide the power by itself. It will be an internal deal that provides the power. We're not gonna have power lines running all over eventually.
Yeah, the Tesla stuff back in Tesla, transmitting power.
No, we've already experimented with propane and natural gas where it's a energy cell, and it works.
Yeah.
But it just isn't economical yet. But there's other things, hydrogen, nitrogen coming along, that's gonna make that, which is way ahead, And I'll tell you, sir, I have seen cell towers working that's been out for 28 days in an ice storm, but they're working, so they don't, that's not as big a deal, because they have to plan on that. You're putting cell phone tower, yeah, maybe in town it's a little better, but out in the country, I had 2,400 miles of line under my jurisdiction, and that was the way it was.
Robert, you mentioned about the road. I have an FAA tower on my property, and I did not pay for the road. The county did not pay for the road. The FAA paid for that road to get into their site. And that's why. Anyway.
I'm not gonna disagree with you that that there's a complicated subject there.
Yeah.
But in my opinion, if I'm a county commissioner, my number one job is public safety first. Number one job. So if there is a public safety component to something that is before me, I'm gonna treat it as it is very important, because it's a public safety component. And if that public safety component cost us $4,000 to the county, I'm gonna vote for $4,000 for the county to do it.
Can I ask you a different question? Oh.
What's the economic impact of the windmills in the north end of the town as far as the increase in either the tax base and then also potentially the loss of individuals moving to the area? I don't know if that's.
So that's a great question. So here's the deal with that. So me and Mark Schreiber sat down and had a conversation. You cannot tax wind in Kansas. You can't meter it and you can't tax it. So there was a good faith payment that the county, and I'm sure Raleigh can probably hit on this, worked out with Southern Power. Southern Power worked out a deal, it's a 200 megawatt wind facility. As a good faith payment, they're gonna pay $1,535 per megawatt that's generated. So it's gonna work out to be, if you do the math, somewhere around $300,700 to the county annually. That's 1% of our budget from one project. After 10 years, each one of them towers that's there has a 10-year no tax exclusion. You can't tax the structure for 10 years. After 10 years, you can tax the structure, the property in which it's sitting on, which is about 1 acre. The 1 acre takes into account the footprint of the tower, plus the roads that lead to the tower. It's 1 acre. It had to be rezoned commercial. That's the responsibility of the landowner to pay that. So we are getting an increased property, real estate tax back to us based on that assessment. But I think we got a long way to go in wind. I think it's ridiculous that we can't tax the amount of energy output. Just like when you get your electric bill from a commercial, there's taxes on there. There's absolutely no reason why we shouldn't be gaining some type of a tax revenue back on the megawatts that are generated off of wind. But that's a state deal. That's a state deal. That's not a county deal. There's nothing that we can do about that. But all we can do is negotiate, and what they did is worked out that good faith payment of $1,535 per megawatt. That's probably not enough revenue for some people that have to see it, because some people, it's dotted across the Flint Hills. I do think that as we move forward, and there's all kinds of arguments to be made about this, the only reason that we have national security in this country is because we are energy independent. And that energy independency comes from all different forms of technology and energy. We can sit here and argue about the return on investment of wind versus others. Royal Caribbean is purchasing the power off of the system to offset 10 to 12% of their carbon emissions. So the power that's being generated off of that facility, Royal Caribbean Cruise Lines is actually purchasing that, putting it back onto the grid to offset 10 to 12% of their carbon emissions. So there is a economic green component to it too. But I do think that we need to change things on a federal and state level if we really want to get the benefit. I do think there should be some regulations in place as far as zoning. I think if you go out to western Kansas and you look at the Flint Hills, it's just like where one was sitting now, it's just absolutely covered with them. Like if you look, they're just everywhere. I'm okay with what we have, but I'm not so sure I would be okay if we wanted another one on the northwestern part and another one on the southern part, another one on to where everywhere you looked in Lyon County across the Flint Hills, you would see them. I'm not sure I would be okay with that moving forward.
Okay, Stuart? Stuart, you had a question?
Yeah, I think that answers it. I guess one of the things, and I'm not sure it is a problem, one of the things, that's good enough. I'll leave it there.
I got a little bit I'd like to. As most of you know, if you were at the zoning board meeting, I voted in favor of the wind farm, and there's a couple of reasons for that. One, I do think that the wind energy is important, and part of what I base that on is over the years, if you've ever listened to the coal industry or the natural gas industry or the oil industry talk, over the years, the number that always comes up, we've got enough natural gas, we've got enough coal, and they'll throw out the year, the 400 years. You always hear that. And we've already been here a little over 500. We need a long-term plan. So these things as we're developing these energy sources are becoming more and more efficient. And actually wind's getting to be fairly efficient. Now, one of the things that I find that I wish we had addressed when we originally done the zoning, but the technology wasn't there, but it is going to be in the third draft when it comes out, that if there's any improvements to that would require zoning or to come back and additional wind farms in the county, and that was to be approved, there would be a requirement to use the most current innovative lighting system. There's emergency lighting systems out there now available that weren't available 9 years ago when that regulation was written, that is radar based. To where the only time it comes up is when there's an aircraft approaching, and then the lights will ramp up, and then when that goes past, they ramp back down. I don't think that there's any, it'd be very difficult to come back and probably do anything with the one we've got currently. But if they were to come back and do a major improvement, I was involved, through my last job, putting roads in for a wind farm up near Lincoln, Kansas. And that was about 12 years ago, and since then, they've gone in and replaced all of the generators on them. Because they weren't wore out, but the generators, the technology has moved far enough along that they replaced them and upgraded them. Well, if you were to come back and do that in 10 or 12 years, then we could get that lighting system then addressed at that time. Because to me, I think the lighting is probably the thing that, when they first put them up and they had the lights on there during construction, it was kind of dim. It wasn't too bad, but now that the lights are pretty bright, and I can see that that's being a problem. But I don't know how we really address it on this one, but I do think going forward we can address it.
I guess my question would be, why wasn't it addressed at this juncture? Because you can go on the internet in about 5 minutes, see some of the technology that you're discussing, and yet it appears that we were putting windmills out here north of town, which many people are basically adversely affected by. There's no compensation for landowners that only get to view it, such as myself. There's no compensation for people who like to ride their bicycles through the Flint Hills, and you talk to people and they say, oh gosh, or, it isn't gonna be as nice riding your bicycle out there. It's not gonna be as nice driving along. You talk to people over there by Waverly. You don't talk to people who say, isn't this beautiful? You hear people say, this is atrocious. And so I guess that's my only concern is, why was there not any consideration given to the lighting when we were putting it in right now and the technology existed to ameliorate some of these problems that we're talking about?
I can't answer why that wasn't addressed now. I just know I can address when the zoning regulations were written, that wasn't something that was there.
My understanding is they had 10 years to address that. So from the first time that they were approached was 10 years ago.
No way.
Yes, 10 years ago.
No, you're wrong there,
No,
partner.
when I sat down with Sam Seeley, the planning and zoning.
You didn't sit down as much.
The very first time I sat down with him, he said that the very first time that they were approached for wind generation in this area was 10 years ago.
You're right, that may have been. But when people tried to go in and explain that knew what was going on, nobody wanted to listen.
No, I'm not talking about, I'm on your side. I said that the zoning. Yes.
Because we didn't know about it.
Yes.
For about 6 months.
Mm-hmm. So a lot of the things that you have is lack of transparency, but there is 10 years that the county and city could have reached out and done focus groups or however they wanted to do it to try to get people involved. 10 years. 10 years.
And how many windmills, one of the county commissioner has windmills on their property, is that correct?
Yes, Jeff Briggs.
And did they vote?
Scott Briggs, I'm sorry.
Yes.
And he voted for it?
Sure he did. He recused himself and then backed up and
Well,
voted for it.
Yeah,
And my understanding is if he
Okay,
didn't vote,
the
it
reason-
wouldn't pass.
The reason Scott.
That's right.
recused himself
It wouldn't have passed.
And had to come back,
What's he?
Raleigh can correct me if
personal
I'm wrong,
interest.
it's because of
Yeah.
the super majority.
That's why you need 5.
That's
Why
Commissioner.
why
not
you
just
need
put it off till
five.
the next election? You know, I mean, just
You need
don't
5,
even
you
vote
need
for it.
5
If you know
commissioners.
that there's a conflict of interest, you don't vote. That's how it's supposed to work. You
How'd
don't
it go,
vote.
Raleigh?
What was that? The zoning request, it passed.
No, how did it go? What was the discussion at the time that the man who owns the property voted to have it happen on his property?
He excused himself for all the meetings until the night of the vote or the morning of the vote. And then he unexcused himself. He got wind farms on his property, his sisters, and his brother-in-law's.
And what's the state statute require?
Yeah.
I think the
I
issue.
think they found an exclusion in, and I don't recall the county, I was at the meeting when it was voted on,
Yep.
but he announced that they discovered on some county out in western Kansas,
The county attorney, yes, you're
Attorney
right.
General or somebody allowed that they wouldn't have.
Because they were
to
advising that it
sell.
wasn't county funds, it was the state and federal funds, I believe, is why they were able to get around it potentially. But I didn't know if that was a discussion that had taken place with the county, and as far as the perceived conflict of interest on something like that, that was a discussion that's had.
Probably wouldn't have been a financial benefit to him in any way, was it?
Okay, I think this has been a great discussion, and I told you they'd ask a lot of questions. So, we're going to move on now to the business part of the meeting. But if you guys can stay around, it sounds like there are more questions that you'll have opportunity to answer. So you're welcome to stay, or if you need to get going, that's okay too.
Maybe good luck.